Hey, you Potter Than Hell junkies. This is Carl Kennedy from the Rods in Kennedy. You're listening to the Potter Than Hell podcast with the metal encyclopedias themselves. Steve, BC, BB, and Dylan on the keyboards. Crank it up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is your last stop on the crazy train of hard rock and heavy metal. So sit back, buckle in, and hang on. Here we go.
Hello, Potter Than Hellions. Welcome back to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is Steve, your host, and across from me this evening is
BC.
And on the keyboards this evening is
Dylan.
So actually, it's kind of weird because Dylan plays bass and he does keyboards, just like one of the guys we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah.
And speaking of
I don't sing, though.
Keyboards and bass, we have Mark Anthony K with us. How are you, my friend?
Greetings. How are you guys?
We are good. Welcome back, Mark. We just talked to Mark a couple weeks ago. We did the bonus episode with Mark for Project Gemini in the year 3073, Book 2, that is out as we speak. So get out there and get it. It is kick ass. And Mark, how are things going with that sales and stuff?
It's actually going very, very well, I have to admit, because it's been going pretty steadily. I've been getting orders pretty much every day, and the thing that I've been really happy about is that people have been ordering a lot of the back catalog stuff too. I've been, having to prepare CDs like crazy, like from the first couple of records, which is very good. And just a little quick note, I still have 3 copies left of A Brand New Day on purple vinyl, and I dropped the price down to $18 Canadian. So if nobody has a copy of that still wants one, now is your chance. There's only 3 copies left, and there'll never be a repressing of that.
Oh, cool. I think mine's number 11, maybe.
There you go.
I think so. Yeah, so I'm happy for you. It's great. We did the bonus episode myself, you and BB, and I'm finally, like I said, I'm finally glad I can listen to it all the way through now without having to press each track, which is fantastic. So BC, what's up with you? How you doing today? You look a little less frazzled today.
By a little bit. Like I said, I had a plan for today, and of course, it went in a totally different direction as it always does. So I'm just going to give up planning anything anymore and just roll with it.
Well, at least you should be happy
That's the way.
Your Buffalo Bills beat the Seahawks this week.
They did.
They fucking boned me on FanDuel, by the way. How are you, Dylan? How are you? How's the wing?
It's getting better. Getting more mobility with it, so that's what's important. Still hurts, but, what can you do?
Good. Go to occupational therapy and get your ass kicked for half an hour, and you're good to go for the rest of the night. And I myself am doing pretty good this evening as well. And so what are we listening to before we get rocking here? Dylan, how about you? What do you got going?
So Foo Fighters were on Saturday Night Live last Saturday. They announced that they were coming out with the new album, Medicine at Midnight. I think it's coming next year. And they played a new song called Shame, Shame, so I checked that out this week. I do not like it at all. I think it's kind of a boring song.
Oh, yeah?
It only has one setting, and it just... It's almost the same thing over and over again, and I don't know. I wanted a little something more from a lead-off single for this new album. It just didn't strike me.
That was shocking.
Well, especially since how long it took in between albums, right? That was
I think the last one,
2016,
Concrete and Gold, was, let me check real quick, 2017. Because I reviewed it when I was in college, so.
Well, it seems like it was longer than that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, that album was okay.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this isn't the direction they're going. Because they said that they had like a Bowie sound for this new album.
Ugh.
And I didn't really hear it with this new track as much. I'm hoping that it gets more towards what they said it would be.
No one can sound like Bowie except you.
No, very true, very true.
No offense, guys, but thank God.
Oh, stop.
BC, how are you? What do you got going?
I went back to Every Murr's Nightmare's new one, giving it our shot through. I'm enjoying it. I know it's lacking something.
It doesn't have that EMN dust on it.
We're all disappointed by the new music for the people we like.
I know. It's like, of course, I'm rocking the Armored Satan. I keep going back to Restrained. I'm really enjoying it. Vocally, musically, it tickles my eardrum.
Absolutely. How about you, Mark? Have you gotten a chance to just kick back and check something out?
I'll tell you, this is the proper and opportune time for me for new music because now I'm between records. I don't have to sit there and worry about mixing or mastering, and I don't have to start writing anything yet. And I've just finished, writing, and I'm about 3/4 done recording my Christmas EP, so I don't have to think about writing anything. So now is when I start devouring albums that I haven't listened to in a long time. So I've been listening to the Best of Kiss solo records. I got that Japanese CD version that came out recently. I've been listening to that quite a bit. I also got a great album called Euphoria from Trade. It's not a new album, but it's one that I haven't had in my collection. So I've been listening to that quite a bit. And I've been really, really listening a lot to a band called Days Between Stations. It's a band that Billy Sherwood's been producing, and they're from California, but they're very proggish. Like, I think their shortest song on the record is like 5 minutes long, and they have like 3 songs that are like over 11 minutes, and it's really good. It's right up my alley.
All right, very cool. Me, actually, Dylan, I don't know if you even checked this out, or BC. I'm sure Mark probably didn't. It's the CMFT album, Corey Taylor's solo album.
Oh, I did hear about it. I added it, but I didn't.
It's really good.
What is it now?
Corey Taylor. It's CMFT. It's like Corey motherfucking Taylor. It's really good. I was like, I'll throw it on there, and I listened to it today. It was really, really good. I've been listening to that. Our old Harpo friend John Hahn, his instrumental album Undiscovered World, with our buddy Carl Kennedy playing drums on that. New Eclipse Live album is out, is fantastic. Red Beach has a new album out that is very good. I didn't get all the way through that one yet.
Sonny's favorite, Jeff Scott Soto,
Jeff Scott Soto has one. Yeah, there's a ton. It's like that. When women say, I have nothing to wear, I have nothing to listen to, there's 8,000 things out new, and it's weird because like every year, like since we started doing the podcast, it's like so hard to narrow down what albums are out, and it's funny too because the ones that we pick, always after we do it, someone's messaging us or texting us, hey, well, you forgot about this, and then you discover an album that was out, like saying like March or something the year before, and like you didn't even know it was out, and then you check it out and it kicks ass, and you're like, fuck, I missed that one. So, and there's a ton of shit out there. I have like literally like 3 pages of albums that came out this year, and I just I narrowed it down to I think like 25 that I'm just trying to pick from. So there's like. And there's still ones coming out like as we speak, and it's tough. You can't keep up with this shit, but I love it. And I actually have been listening to the Restrained as well, which it was funny. Was I telling you we were in the car and my wife liked it? We were driving. I had it playing in the car, and she's like, "Who's this?" I'm like, "Oh, Restrained. Remember Tony from Sonny's Party?" She's there. Yeah. I said, "Well, this is his band." She goes, "Well, I really like that." So. And unusual because usually if she likes something it's not great, but I mean and it was I think it was the song Smother, and it's got really good harmonies in it. So Tony, you guys definitely rock. So what we're listening to, Mark's got Best of the Kiss solo albums, and Mark, you broke up that one with Euphoria. That's the only thing I got from that.
That's a World Trade, it's called.
Okay, World Trade, Euphoria, and then he has Days Between Stations, Billy Sherwood band that he's producing. Dylan is saying shame on the Foo Fighters for their song Shame because it's not good according to Dylan. BC is still trying to get into the Every Mother's Nightmare, Rockin' Armored Saint, and Restrained. Myself, Corey Taylor's CMFT album, John Hahn, Eclipse, Red Beach, everybody. And so there's what we're listening to, you guys. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
But I did want to throw in one thing. I think it's very important, especially for listening prog fans. It was just announced, I think it was maybe even today or yesterday, that Transatlantic, one of my favorite prog bands with Mike Portnoy in there, the guy from Flower King, or Rona Stolt, the guy from the bass players in it, and Neil Morris is in it, like a super group. They're releasing a new record in February 2021 called The Absolute Universe. Must have.
All right, Transatlantic. Yeah, I've heard the name. I'll have to look into those guys. I like that kind of stuff for sure. So we have Mark back on the show. So we are going to do part number 4 of our Rush series, and we're gonna start.
You can even call it part 4 of the trilogy to reference a song that we're gonna be covering.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, so we got Mark with us, our in-house Rush expert. What better person to have do Rush than a fellow Canadian for these guys? So, Mark, take us away. We'll start out with the live album from the last 4 albums that we did.
Yeah, so first up is A Show of Hands. So A Show of Hands is the live record. Now, if you've been following along, Rush has a sort of pattern that they do. It's sort of like, let's do 3 or 4 records and then a live one. 3 or 4 records again and then a live one. So it's usually been 4 records that they do, and then they do a live one. So this came after Grace Under Pressure. Then you had Power Windows, Fire, and as well. Sorry, I forgot Signals at the beginning there. So after those records were done, we have the live album. The live album came out January 9th, 1989. And, it was recorded during 2 tours. It was done mainly from the Hold Your Fire tour, and a few of the songs also were done from the 1986 Power Windows tour. The songs on it are what you would expect from this time period. You got the Big Money, Subdivisions, Marathon, Distant Early Warning, Witch Hunt, Force 10, Red Sector A, and then they close off with a very odd song, Closer to the Heart, because that's not what they closed the show with. And that's, you need to keep in mind, if you're a Rush fan, this is anything, or pretty much it's as far away as a proper live show from Rush as you'll ever hear. This has nothing to do with how the show went, because the only thing that's kind of correct in this is that they had the introduction, which was the Three Stooges thing that they used, and then they would open with the Big Money. But after that, it's like not how their set list went at all. Never. And I've seen Rush like pretty much every single year they've been on tour since 1984. They have never ever closed a concert with Closer to the Heart. Okay, so this is just one of those things where they made a live album from various shows, because if you take a look at the track listing in the album on the sleeve, every song, it tells you what show they recorded it from. So a bunch of them were from Birmingham, UK. There was one from New Orleans. There was one from Phoenix. There was one from San Diego. So this is not like one show that they did proper and recorded it like they did for, like, let's say, All the World's a Stage, right? So with that said, I don't mind this album. Like, I remember the very first time I heard it was at my drummer's house from my old band. His father had a really, really kick-ass stereo system, and his father worked for Air Canada, so he always did these crazy long shifts, and he was never home half the time. So we would, like, play these songs and, his records in his place at, like, subsonic levels. And listening to this on vinyl, because we only bought, vinyl back then, was quite a good experience. The only complaint I had was this was a time where Alex Lifeson was using, Gailey and Kruger amps and stuff like that. And his guitar sound was just not my cup of tea at this time. But, look, Rush live is fantastic. They're spot on. They always do great performances. Neil always gives us a great drum solo on the albums as well, and this album is no exception. And, I think that if you like this period of music, then you'll like this live album. And for me, at first I didn't like this live album too much because I was kind of, not too hip on this period. But nowadays, I really, really love the Power Windows, Hold Your Fire stuff. And this album has taken a whole new life with me because of that.
This album's okay for me too. I think my biggest problem with it is, again, you can't really hear the crowd until the band, like, on occasion they'll turn the crowd back up, but I don't know if it's the way it's mixed or whatever. I don't get that live feeling from it at times, but the band sounds great. I do love the Three Stooges intro. I was blasted back to the past of watching the Three Stooges shorts, and it's so appropriate for Rush, a trio, to have a Three Stooges referencing opening. I think the song choices are pretty good. I could do without Time Stand Still. That song is not, I'm not a fan. But otherwise, Closer to Heart, yeah, it's weird to close the album with it. Do we know what they did close their shows with during this period?
Yeah, they normally closed with songs like, In the Mood, or they would close with, like, Tom Sawyer. Mm-hmm. Like, they would normally close their set proper with that. And then their encore, they would come back with stuff like 2112, like the overture and Temples of Syrinx, and then they would do there was a long time where they were doing like In the Mood and songs like that to end with.
That's pretty cool. Going back to the early Rush. And the Mood's a really good song. A nice upbeat ender. But yeah, it's an okay album, I would say.
Again, when it comes to Rush in my book, I'm a live Rush guy. I don't know what it is. I enjoy the albums, but Rush live is just an experience, I guess you could say. I mean, but overall, I mean, I like a lot of his album, like Big Money, Subdivisions, Time Stands Still. I don't mind that song on here.
Dylan keeps thinking the video, probably.
Yeah, I can't separate that. Like you say, you can't separate.
Yeah.
I can't separate that video where they're floating. Through the green
It goes
screen.
both ways.
Yeah.
Once it's in your mind, it's burned in your mind. But no,
Aiming man on the camera.
I totally enjoyed this album, but then again, it's live Rush.
Yeah, for me, and like I've always said, I've been a late bloomer to be a faithful Rush fan, and I was aware of Tom Sawyer back in the day, and I remember when Subdivisions came out and stuff. But I never bought these albums. But for some reason, I always bought the live albums. I picked this up, and I never until in the last 5 or 6 years I started getting the Rush CDs and now the vinyl, but I never had Signals and Power Windows and Grace Under Pressure and Hold Your Fire. I never ever had those albums until we really started doing the podcast and I really started getting into Rush. So these live albums, like this one and A Different Stage, the next one, these are the ones that introduced me to these songs from these other albums. And I think it is kind of disjointed how it is, because that this is not a set list that they're going to be playing at a show, but they did a good job of picking the songs from these albums. Like Big Money, fantastic. And these versions of some of these songs are my go-to versions. And I'm like BC, I'm like a live guy. Love the stuff like Big Money comes across so good. And and it's a great opening song. It's a big song. It has a big sound to it, a big feel to it. Perfect opening song. Absolutely love Subdivisions and Marathon. Marathon has been an earworm in my ear for like the last 3 weeks. I would literally get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I would be singing Marathon, going down the hall to the bathroom. Songs like Turn the Page, Manhattan Project, Mission is really good. And I absolutely love Distant Early Warning. Mystic Rhythms, that's a tough one. That one I can't do that one. Although they do throw Witch Hunt in there from Moving Pictures, right? That's Moving Pictures, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the one song that they throw in there, and Closer to the Hearts from Grace Under Pressure, right?
Farewell to Kings.
Farewell to Kings. So they do throw 2 older songs in there. But, Witch Hunt is just a short song anyways. But, and like you said, you get the rhythm method, the drum solo from him. Time Stands Still, that's okay. Love Red Sector A. And it is odd that, Closer to the Heart is, what they have as the closer on this album. But I like it. Like I said, this was my connection to Rush in the late 80s, early 90s with this and the next live albums, because I never had the albums even that we're going to be talking about tonight until like the last few years. So these were my Rush lifeline, these live albums, and I like it. And I love the sound on it, and these are some of my go-to versions of these songs.
So just for reference sake, I did look up a show that I saw with Rush on the Hold Your Fire tour, Maple Leaf Gardens, March 8th. The set list goes as follows: 3 Blind Mice intro, The Big Money, Subdivisions, Limelight, Marathon, Turn the Page, Prime Mover, Manhattan Project, Closer to the Heart, Red Sector A, Force 10, Time Stands Still, Distant Early Warning, Lock and Key, Mission, Territories, YYZ, Drum Solo, Neil Peart, Red Lenses, The Spirit of Radio, and they closed the first set off with Tom Sawyer, and the encore was exactly what I thought it was. 2112 Part 1, Overture, 2112 Part 2, Temples of Syrinx. Then they did La Villa Stragiato, and then they did In the Mood they closed with. So they played 24 songs that night.
Wow, that's a show and a half.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Mark, when you saw that, what year was that?
1988.
88. Now, were they at that time just doing an evening with Rush, or did they have opening bands at that point?
They had opening bands.
Did they? Okay.
I remember at this time, I believe it was FM that was opening.
They're like a super group, right? Are they?
No, they're like a Canadian band that were like, their first album that they came out with, which is called Black Noise, was released on actually CBC Records, which is like the Canadian Broadcasting System company thing, which is very Canadian. And right now, if you look up FM Black Noise, that's a very, very prog cultish record to have.
I was thinking The Firm. That's what I was thinking. I'll have to check them out. I've heard the name before, and I just kind of messed them up with that. So I like that. I like that album, and I've never seen Rush live until R30.
Yeah, well, it was a great show. I mean, honestly, they have great lighting. Their sound is always fantastic. I mean, especially when they hit like some of that super low end bass pedal stuff, like for stuff like Marathon and stuff like that. Like the floor is like shaking. It's like impressive how it sounds live. But it was just they were going through a transitional period. You know what I mean? Like they were trying new things. The Rush is a band, as we know from listening to the catalog, as we have, that never stay in one area for too long, right? And this was their time when they started incorporating more keyboards. But as we notice now, as we go into the next phase of their recording career, things are afoot and things are changing.
I also like the album cover. Just wanted to say before we moved on.
Yeah, that is kind of cool.
Yeah, with they're all the geometric shapes, almost like an abstract artwork. It's very, very late 80s to me.
It is cool.
Yes. So the next album after this, if you don't mind me continuing.
No, go ahead.
A record that I have a very difficult relationship with. The next album up is Presto. Now, this album was released November 21st, 1989. It was produced by Rupert Hine and Rush, okay? And it was done at the studio in Montreal Heights, Quebec. Rest in peace, because they're now destroying that studio. And rumor has it they might be doing some kind of rebuild of it. I'm keeping my fingers crossed because that was a legendary place. And it was mixed and mastered at McClare Place in Toronto. Now, this album I was waiting for as a teenager, okay? And I was keeping my fingers crossed that when Q107, the local radio station here, said that we have the advanced copy of Presto coming up here, and we've been listening to it, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. And gentlemen, let me tell you, it sounds like they're going back to their moving pictures era. I was like, oh my God, really? I was like, that's going to be fantastic. But as we know, these DJs lie all the time. They're just hyping things for the sake of hyping. And when they first released the first single, which was Show Don't Tell, which came out in November of 1989, I was sort of unsure of what to think. Now, it wasn't heavily keyboard, written. It was back more to a three-piece, but Alex's guitar was still a little lacking in balls, in my opinion. It was better. Geddy Lee's bass was very mid-rangey sounding, like very da-da-da-da-da. There was no real bottom end because he was using that dreaded wall bass, okay, at this time. And Neil's drum set sounded particularly thin to me. I mean, the snare drum was like really cutting on there, but his kick drum had no oomph to it to me. And I blame this all on Rupert Hine, okay, because I thought that he was a mistake as a producer because he always kind of did these, I don't know, he never did records that I liked. So when they said they were getting him in, I was kind of like, oh, okay, and just kind of gave it a chance, okay? Now, keep in mind, the record didn't do poorly. It went to number 7 in Canada and number 16 in the United States, okay? And there were a few singles released from it. Show Don't Tell, The Pass, and Superconductor were singles from them. And it's funny because it did chart number 1 on the U.S. rock album chart, which is I think Show Don't Tell, that single charted. It did end up becoming a gold record. It was 500,000 copies sold in the United States, so that's not bad, right? Obviously, for a record. I mean, everybody was hoping for a gold record, but for me personally, I've never taken to this record. I mean, once I got past Show of Hands and I listened to, like, when I went out and bought the record itself, I was kind of excited. I said, okay, let's put this on and let's take a listen to it. And right as soon as I got to the second song, Chain Lightning, I was kind of like, okay, that wasn't too good. Then they went to the Past, and I was like, okay, that's kind of a ballad. I'll let that slide. But everything on the record kind of had it's almost like AOR sort of, dad rock to it a bit, It just seemed like it was a little too safe. There was a lot of acoustic guitar. Like every song had acoustic guitar playing through the whole song. Whether there was electric guitar on top of it or not, there was always acoustic guitar in it. And then side 2 of the record, because side 1 had Show Don't Tell, Chain Lightning, The Past, War Paint, Scars, which is totally keyboards. There's no bass in that at all. It's just sequenced keyboard stuff. And Presto was okay. But again, there was a lot of acoustic guitar through that whole song. Superconductor was okay. It was sort of a more attempt at getting back to sort of rootsy rock and roll. But then the last 2 songs on this record, Red Tide was okay. It was kind of a bit more prog-ish. Reminded me a little bit of like experimental, like Discipline era King Crimson a bit. But then Hand Over Fist and Available Light, it was ending on a sour note for me. It was like Available Light sounded like Frank Sinatra to me back then. It was like, what is this? Like, what are they playing? It was really like not the Rush that I was expecting, to get when they were hyping this up. Because you got to remember, back at this time, I was playing music already. At this point, I was 1989. I would have been like 18 years old, 16 years old, around there. So I was into music, but I knew nothing about the business and anything like that at that point. So when a radio station DJ says that it's going to sound like this, I believed them, and I felt very, very lied to after I got this record. So every time I made a Rush list for podcasts or for whatever, and I even did a review of this record with Julian not too long ago on the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast, I've always placed this record as last on my list of Rush albums. It's never connected with me, and I've given it lots of chances. I went out and bought the Ultra SACD super high definition version of it. I bought in the 200 gram vinyl reissues, and it's still nothing connects with me apart from Show Don't Tell. That's about it. The Past is good. I don't mind that song, but I think it's a song that's much better live than it is on album. But let's just talk about the record first. What do you guys think of this record?
Again, I agree with Mark. This came out, Joe Casero. I used to work with him right out of high school, and he was diehard Rush back then. Now he's diehard Kicks.
He's a Kicks guy now, yeah.
But and he took me to my first Rush concert, which was I walked in. It was the first concert that there was actual seats on the floor, and I was like,
confuse you from the general.
You walk in the arena and you go down onto the floor, and I walked in. I was like, what are those seats doing there? So I always like Steve. I listened to Rush, but I never really bought the albums or anything. So I was almost kind of like a hits guy back then. But since getting into Rush and starting listening to these albums, I gotta agree. This one, I don't know. It lacks something. And like Mark said, you named some things I could probably say for me would be it. Show Don't Tell. I like that one, and Superconductor. Other than that, it's not bad, but I don't know. I like that kind of dad rock or whatever.
Dad rock.
I like that one. But overall, not bad, but I would have jumped to this album again.
Yeah. For me, this album, definitely not a favorite Rush album for me. There's not a lot of life in this album. There's too many slow mid-tempo songs. There's no real dynamic vocals from Geddy in this album. Not enough guitar solos for my likings. And I agree with Mark too. The drums don't even really stand out a lot for me. There's some really great drumming, of course, but like nothing that blows me away. Show Don't Tell. I like it. I don't think it's a good album opener though. Chain Lightning. I think if that little beginning part of it, I think if you got rid of that, I think that would possibly be a good opener. Some really good fills in that one. The Pass, I really love The Pass. I think that is an absolutely fantastic song. It's got a great feel to it. I love the chorus, the guitars. He has that soaring guitar sound to it. Warpaint's not bad. Not a whole lot going from the start, but it gets a little harder in the middle. It's got a melodic solo that's pretty good. I like the line now. Paint the mirror black. The mirror always lies. I think that's kind of cool. Scars, it's got like a funky bass. Presto.
It's not a bass.
Huh?
It's not a bass. It's a sequencer.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like bass, but
okay. Well, Presto, another slow one. Pretty good solo in it though, but it's and even this when Alex does solo on this album, they're very short. Anagram, another kind of run of the mill song. At first listen for that's a song that kind of grew on me as I listened to this album a couple times. Red Tide is kind of cool. This is one of my favorite ones on this one. It goes up tempo and it kicks down for the verses. It builds back up. The bass sound is really good. This is a good deep track, I think, here. The little solo that Alex plays on it just is ripping on there. Hand Over Fist, not too bad, I guess. Available Light, I really like Available Light for some reason. That song kind of was an ear catcher for me, but kind of not a real exciting, dynamic album. I think that it's like kind of like Hold Your Fire Part 2 for me. It's not bad, and it's not terrible. There's some good points on there I like, but nothing crazy. It's not going to be a go-to album for me for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't listened to this album really at all before this episode. I mean, I had heard the songs that were on the live stuff. I think maybe Show Don't Tell, maybe The Pass. I think The Pass was on like Rock in Rio or something. Mm-hmm. But I had not listened to this, and I was reading up on it on Wikipedia, and they were saying, yeah, this is a return to their more guitar-driven Rush rather than the keyboard. So, like Mark, my expectations were heightened for this album, and I liken this album to a wave in the ocean. It just kind of washes over me. It doesn't leave any impact. I'm still standing. It's not I don't know. Nothing really stuck with me except a few different songs. It's kind of a mellow album. There's no real weight to any of the production, I don't think. It seems very sparse at parts whereas I want the sound to be filled. A
little too stripped down or something.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I think you're right with the producer, Mark, that I kind of blame him on this. Scars, I like the sequencer. I wish it was bass, but it's a cool little line. Superconductor, I like that it actually has some energy compared to the rest of the album. There's some get up and go that I enjoy, and then Red Tide was the other song that I enjoyed. That seemed like you said, it was a really good deep track. But this is definitely one of my least favorite Rush albums on this list, and I couldn't really take much from it. There wasn't a lot there. It seemed like they were trying to be clever at times, but I don't know. It just didn't stick with me. Definitely my least favorite of the night.
Yeah, and I'll admit, the record did very poorly in my eyes as far as keeping my interest, because at this point I was starting to get more into other bands. Obviously, at this point, there's a lot of other things going on. I was into Metallica, and I was getting into some other stuff that was much heavier. At this point, I'd also been kind of if it wasn't at this time, it was right around this time. I think that Painkiller came out around this time sometime. And that was a huge record for me. So, and that was kind of like where I was heading towards musically. So this was kind of like, this is something that, I would have expected my uncle to listen to or something at that point,
Yeah,
in comparison.
Day from this album. Okay. That's like the mirror image of that, like this, yeah.
Yeah, so, and then, but the thing is, though, I still felt quite a bit of loyalty to them on the live show front. But I'll admit, I was hesitant to go, but my sister wanted to go, and she was the one who first took me to my very first concert, so I felt, okay, I'm going to go with her because she was being always cool with me. So I went with her, and she took a bunch of my friends with me, and we went, and I have to say that the concert really saved me from bailing on Rush, because first of all, they had Voivod open.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was really good, like really good. Like Voivod were super heavy, so that appealed to me right away. And they at that point they had released Nothing Face, that record, and they were doing Astronomy Dominate. That was their big cover that they did on there, and it was being played everywhere on Much Music, and it's really good. I venture to say, and I know I've been really, hammered by, people on the internet for saying this, but I think it's better than Floyd's version easily. So that's just my opinion. But the Rush set was incredible. First of all, Alex Lifeson started changing his gear up a bit. He was still using the Galen Kruger stuff, but what he was doing is he was splitting his amp signal. He was using just a preamp now from that, and he was running that now into a Mesa Boogie power amp. So his sound was starting to get a bit more heavier live now. And it helped because the show that I saw, May 16th, 1990, Maple Leaf Gardens, Toronto, had the following: Force 10, Free Will, Distant Early Warning, Time Stands Still, Subdivisions, Marathon, Red Barchetta, Superconductor, Show Don't Tell, The Pass, Closer to the Heart, Manhattan Project, Xanadu, YYZ, Drum Solo, Scars, Warpaint, Mission, and Tom Sawyer was the ending of the set. And then the encore was Spirit of the Radio, 2112 Part 1 only this time, into La Villa Stragiato, and then In the Mood, and then they ended with like a 30-second version of Wipeout, they did that to end the show with. That show did a lot in reaffirming my love for the band, because they also did this really funny thing where they had like these two like magicians' top hats on either side of the stage, and during Presto and some of the songs from that, they would inflate these huge rabbits that would come out of the hat, and it was like really cool. It was like, whoa, what the hell is that? And they would have these huge rabbits like bopping to the music back and forth while they played, right? And they started taking their live show a little bit more seriously at this point. And one of the things that was also different from this tour than prior ones is that Alex Lifeson, the tour before, was saying that he was getting sick and tired of touring. So they went from doing huge like tours to doing a simple 3-month tour of just North America, and that was it. And then they stopped, right? And so that really also helped them refuel a bit, because they didn't do as lengthy a tour for this. But the one thing I have to say, though, that I always had respect for, and I'm curious to hear your guys' reaction on this, is that Rush is one of these bands that when they go out on tour, they will always play a lot of songs off the record that they just released. They're not like these other bands. That's the one thing I don't like about bands like AC/DC and stuff like that, or even Kiss, is that they'll release a new record and they'll play maybe 1 or 2 songs, and then everything else is just old songs. With Rush, they always go out and they play songs from their new record. And they have a really cool breakdown here on Setlist FM. On this show, they played 5 songs off of Presto, 3 off of Hold Your Fire, 3 off of Moving Pictures, 2 off of Farewell to Kings, 2 off of Permanent Waves, 2 off of Power Windows, 1 off of 2112, 1 off of Grace Under Pressure, 1 Hemispheres, 1 off the first album, 1 off of Signals, and then they did a cover song. So as you can tell, they did 5 off of their latest album, and that's one thing that they've never changed doing. So I'm curious if you guys are in favor of that, or do you prefer the sort of AC/DC approach to it?
No, I have to agree with you, Mark. That's why you're going to see them. I mean, they come out with a new album, you want to hear the new songs live. At least I do. I understand you got to do the hits, I guess you would say, or some catalog, but when you're doing a new tour, do some new tunes.
Yeah. I definitely prefer them play new songs, because say you're a mega fan of Rush. One, you're going to know the new songs when you go to the show, especially Rush fans, because they're singing along to the goddamn drum beats, let alone the lyrics. But I know that a lot of bands don't trust their fans to enjoy the new stuff, but like if you've gone to your 5th Rush show, you want to hear new things. You don't want to hear the same songs over and over again. You don't want to hear, I mean, maybe you do want to hear Tom Sawyer for 12 times in a row, but you want to get the change up, and I think it helps you appreciate the album in a new light hearing the songs live, because, for instance, one of the songs that we're going to be talking about with the next album, I prefer the live version of the song to the studio version. And that might not have happened if they never played the song live. So I really do like when they play the new stuff.
Yeah, I love new songs, and it doesn't matter the band. Like, and we've seen bands that have new albums out, and they don't play anything off of it.
Yeah.
We've seen Poison. They put out the Hollyweird album. They didn't do a fucking song from it.
I was just going to say Poison.
They didn't do a song from it.
Did you do that? What was that?
They did the Samantha Seventh song. They did the one I love every bone in my body but mine, or something like that. But like, there's bands that won't even put an album on. They won't even play a freaking song from it. And I saw Iron Maiden do A Matter of Life and Death, the whole album. It was fantastic. Yeah. People were pissed because the hits people, they just wanted all the hits. They were like, what the fuck are these songs? And I was like, this is great because this album kicks ass. Although it did get a little long towards the end, though. Once you get into like the Legacy and stuff, it was getting kind of a little long. But as far as Rush goes, 5 is a perfect balance. And Iron Maiden, they're another band that has always done that, regardless of what they have out. They'll do a hits tour, and then they'll do an album, and then an album tour, and you'll get the songs from the album and the tour. And Rush does that as well, because when we saw R30, it was a celebration of them being 30 years, but they did an assload of songs from Vapor Trails, and that's the album that was out when they did R30. And I think it's fantastic. I like when they do, even an album that is, I'll say weaker than Presto, being weaker than some of the other albums, but you get to see them live and say, hey, so maybe they, spruce it up a little live, and you always get that better feel of it live, and I like it.
Why would you want to do a lot more live tunes off your newest album? You're promoting it. That's why you go on tour. Promote your new album.
Yeah. Hey, what song was that? I like that. That's
that
on the new album. Oh, I'm gonna go get it now.
Go get it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the way it's always been. Like back in the day in the 70s, that was always the thing that you did, and that's one thing that started changing as the years went by. Is that when bands started realizing that, oh, my new record isn't selling as much, they don't go and play it. But then they don't realize that if you want your record to sell more, play more songs off it live, because people will usually catch on to it and say, hey, that sounded pretty good. What is that? And then just like BC said, well, it sounded good. I think I'm going to go buy the record now. So that's essentially what the touring was before. That was the whole mentality of touring before. People have lost that knowledge that touring was not there to play your old songs. Touring was meant from as far back as the 60s and 70s as a means to sell your current record. Exactly. Not to push your old material. Okay? Sorry if I'm sounding pissed off about it. But.
And it's kind of sad that's pretty flipped right now.
That's totally flipped.
Because they make the money from touring nowadays rather than from the album.
So, with that said, let's move on to Roll the Bones. Now, Roll the Bones for me is a very interesting record. I'm curious to hear you guys' opinion on this one, because this was clearly a return to form, I think. I've always had this theory with Rush, is that their records go in twos. Like as far back as the beginning, the very first Rush record was like a blueprint, and then Fly By Night was the seeing through of that idea that they had. Crest of Steel was another idea that they had, but 2112 was the perfection of that idea. And so on with every record. And while Presto was an idea of let's try to go back to a stripped down sort of commercial rock radio sort of approach, this album I think like perfected it, because songs on this record are exceptionally better than on Presto in my opinion. Much better written. The recording is better, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back, because, and we'll get to the live end of it later, but when Rush started playing these songs live, they realized what was wrong with their studio records. It just wasn't ballsy enough and didn't translate. Okay, so as far as the production of this record, it was still weak, right? And what I think they realized, like I said, is that if they would have beefed up their sound, this album would have sat much better with them. But with that said, okay, this album came out September 3rd, 1991. It was again done in Le Studio in Quebec, and again mixed on McClare, and it was done with Rupert Hine again. But this album reached number 3 in the United States, number 10 in the UK, number 11 in Canada. And here's something that I think shocks people whenever I mention this to them. Between September 1991 and September 1992, 6 songs from this album were released as singles. 6 songs. Dreamline in September 91, Roll the Bones in November 1991, Ghost of a Chance in April 1992, Bravado in July of 1992, Face Up in August of 1992, and the last single was Heresy, which came out in September 1992. This album also won a Juno for Best Album Design, which is, not really anything to do with them, but still it was a Juno for this record. And this record, believe it or not, went platinum. Okay? Platinum in Canada, platinum in the United States. 1 million albums sold in the United States with this. And because it did so good, guess what? Alex's dream of doing short tours was out the window, because back they were in Europe touring for this album as well. Why? Because they started charting again. In Canada, they did number 11 peak position. In Dutch album charts, they were 38. In the German album charts, they reached number 35. In Sweden, number 31. And like we said before, in the UK, they were number 10. In the US, number 3. So this record did way, way, way better for them as far as, radio play, acceptance from the crowd and their audience. And I think the big thing with that, and one of the things that they were very lucky about, I think, and lucky is the operative word, is that they released Dreamline first. Because I've always had this argument with Rush fans, is that if they would have released Roll the Bones first, I think that they would have had a big problem. Because a lot of people, when they heard Roll the Bones, they were like, oh, what's with that rap shit in the middle, right? And they started having people scratching their heads. But because they did Dreamline before that, that was a pretty rockin' song, It still could have sounded even more rockin', and it does live, but it was a good single to lead off with. And then they did Roll the Bones. But then after Roll the Bones, they had, Ghost of a Chance was a good song. Bravado was really good. So they kind of calmed the waters with those other songs. But, hey, years later, Roll the Bones has become a classic that they play all the time on tour now. So, it did grow on people. So I'm curious, what do you guys think of this record?
I like it. I think it totally blows away Presto for sure. I enjoyed it. I like it way better than Presto. And you have some live staples from this album that they still play to this day. Dreamline, fantastic opening track. I instantly liked the song the first time I heard it. And like I said before, the songs that they play live that are from this album and from the ones we're going to talk about tonight. The first time I heard a lot of these songs was when I picked up the next live album. So I'm used to the live versions of these, and Dreamline is an absolute fantastic song to start. I love the chorus, We Are Young. I freaking love that. I love the da-da-da. And it's another song that reminds me of Big Money. It has that big song feel to it. Bravado, I think, is an absolutely fantastic song. That's one of those songs that has that factor for me. Amazing solo in it. And there's nothing about this song that I don't like. Bravado was a top 10 Rush song for me. Absolutely. Roll the Bones. Like, now you got so used to the mid-tempo kind of pace of Presto. And then when you put this album on, you're like, holy fuck. Like, where was this shit on the last album? Roll the Bones are 3 for 3, really good song. I even like the rap part. I don't even mind that. I like the kick up for the chorus. Get out there and rock and roll the bones, BC. Face Up, more up tempo Rush. I mean, they're just on a roll here and rolling the bones. And there's not a huge amount of keyboards on this album. They're used very judiciously. I like that. They're not like punching in the face with it like on like Grace Under Pressure and albums like that. The Big Wheel's good. Heresy's good. Ghost of a Chance, very, very cool. It's a decent song. I like the main riff. Neurotica, that song to me sounds like it could be on Moving Pictures for some reason. I get that kind of vibe from it. You Bet Your Life, another upbeat song in the album with not too bad. Probably my least favorite on the album, but it's not bad though. It's okay. Some little mini keyboard solo at the end there though, but it blows away Presto.
Yeah, I agree. This was a breath of fresh air for me after listening to Presto. It's just a much more fun album, a lot more energetic. It's livelier. It's really what I like to see from Rush during this era. Because Dreamline as an opener is such a great, fantastic song with the soft verses and the loud chorus. I love the line, learning that we're only immortal for a limited time. Such an interesting way to phrase it. I think the solo is really good in the song, and Alex's guitar playing much more out front in this album. This I could see somebody saying as the return to the guitar form for Rush more so than Presto. Roll the Bones is a classic song for me. I like the live version better because it has that awesome ending to it instead of the fade out, which I understand why the fade out, because it's easier for radio stations to
blend it.
Be like, oh, that was this song with. But I love the solo that Alex does, but again, I like it better live. The rap part is fun to me. I that might be heresy for Rush fans to say, but I like it. It's it's one of my first memories of Rush is this song on the Russian Rio album. Like that's a memory for me. Where's My Thing? I love this instrumental. It's nice, fun, and funky. Has a cool riff in it. Ghost of a Chance, great solo from Alex. Almost Tom Petty-ish at first. And then Neurotica has a fantastic solo in it. But this album, miles better than Presto, for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And I got to say, the live show for this was spectacular. I mean, now at this point, they were really back in the groove, I found. Okay, I went and saw them December 16th, Maple Leaf Gardens, Toronto, and I remember getting tickets for this was a pain in the ass. And for that while there, I was kind of wondering, why the hell is it so hard to get tickets for this friggin' show? And then I kind of dawned on me why it was, because the opening band for this show was the Tragically Hip, okay? And the Tragically Hip had just put out a huge album, I think it was Road Apples at this time. And they were being played on the radio everywhere. Like every day there was something from the Hip on the radio. So when they went and opened, the arena was like a quarter filled for Tragically Hip and the rest was for Rush. But they were loud. There was like a lot of loud Hip fans in the audience that night. Okay? But the great thing was none of them left after the Hip were done. They all stayed, and it was a jammed Maple Leaf Gardens I hadn't seen in a long time, like since Grace Under Pressure. It was like rammed to the tilt. Like I was lucky that I got greens, which was like, third level up for this show. So, but the concert, fantastic. Force 10 was the opener. Limelight, Free Will, Distant Early Warning, Time Stands Still, Dreamline, Bravado, Roll the Bones, Show Don't Tell, The Big Money, Ghost of a Chance, Subdivisions, The Pass, Where's My Thing into the drum solo, Closer to the Heart, Xanadu, Superconductor, and Tom Sawyer they ended with. And then the encore was really, really cool. They did Spirit of the Radio first, and then they did this huge medley, which was 2112 Part 1 Overture into Finding My Way, which is like the first song in the first album, into La Villa Stragiato, into Anthem, which is off of Fly By Night, and then into Red Barchetta, and then they did a reprise of Spirit of the Radio and ended like that. The show was spectacular with the lights, and again they brought out the top hats with the rabbits, but this time they had this really cool animation where on the one side of the screen there was a little like a cartoon character guy that came out with a gun and shot this gun, and this bullet came out, and the bullet was like one of these guys that the bullet was like a character. It had like a cigar in his mouth and was like grimacing at the audience as he flew across the screen. And when he got to the other side, the other rabbit that was inflated exploded and just deflated down. And it was like a really cool moment watching it. I was like, whoa, what the hell is that? Like, 'cause it was a while since Rush started having pyro again and stuff like that at their live shows. So they started bringing it back. But again, things were changing. The guitar sound was a lot heavier. Again, he had changed his gear. Again, he started using PRS guitars, gone were the signature guitars that he had before. His sound got marketably heavier on this. Geddy Lee started pulling out again some of the older basses, like his Fender Jazz and stuff like that was starting to come out. He was still using the Wall mainly, but they were getting heavier sounding a bit. And Neil had abandoned the kit that he had before and made this kind of different drum kit, which sounded a lot better, not only on album, but also live. So the overall sound was getting a lot better. So it was definitely something that I was very happy to see and was anticipating the next album.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about it, BC?
It's funny, Mark said that this is my first time seeing Rush. It was March 12th, 1992 in Binghamton, New York.
Interesting.
And, I mean, maybe that's why I like this album a lot more than the others. A bit more close to my heart. I mean, like you said, to me it was a big experience that night because the first time seeing Rush and first time with seats. And I could not tell you who opened the band, who opened for them, but you were saying. But I remember to come out, and to me, this is probably the most show I've been to at that time. Where the other ones were just mainly a rock show, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This had more production going on. It was really cool. But again, you guys hit on this many times. I mean, the guitar sounds way better on this than Presto. Yeah. Standouts for me were Dreamline, Road to Bones, Face Up, Ghost of Chance. I mean, overall, this is in my upper tier of Rush albums.
All right, very cool. All right, so far we did Show of Hands live album, we did Presto, we did Roll the Bones. So right now we're gonna take a break. We'll do our gem song, and then we'll do our gems. Come back, we'll wrap it up with our last two albums we're gonna talk about. And for the gem song this week, I decided to go with one of the more rockin' tunes from our last Rush episode. So what we're gonna do, but Dylan's gonna play the live version for you when we play it, and we're going to play Analog Kid from the Signals album, but we're going to play the live version of it. So roll it, Dylan.
Afternoon, the trees in concert.
All right, that was Analog Kid Live from our boys Rush here that we are talking about this evening. Thank you for playing that, Dylan.
Is that from the Different Stages version? Is that the one you want me to play?
Yes.
Okay.
So I hope you enjoyed it.
The one with the Tinker Toy,
Yeah. And that'll be the next live album that we do from Rush.
Yeah.
All right, so hidden gem time here, people, and let's start with Dylan since he's so proud of the one he has.
Yeah, my hidden gem is going to be connected to Rush through the name of the song. So in the liner notes of the Roll the Bones album, they have the phrase "Now It's Dark," which is from the movie Blue Velvet, starring, of course, Dennis Hopper. So I'm going to do the song "Now It's Dark" from Anthrax. Fantastic song, of course, about the movie Blue Velvet as well. I believe it's off of the Among the Living album, if I'm not mistaken. But really heavy song. We actually covered the live version of it on one of our previous episodes. No, it is not on the Among the Living album.
No, it's on Persistence of Time, isn't
That's
it?
right. I think it's on Persistence of Time. So we did cover that as well. But it's a fantastic song. I really enjoy it. I always love when I get to reference David Lynch. So this is another, not Persistence of Time, State of Euphoria.
Oh, okay. See,
State of Euphoria. I'm gonna double check.
Come on,
that.
BC, you gotta correct me on this shit.
Yeah, it's State of Euphoria, track 6.
All right, Mark, what do you got for us, Mark?
Well, like I said earlier, I've been doing a lot of listening lately, and when I got this Best of Kiss solo record, I was always expecting that the Japanese pressings of these things would be fantastic, and this is a CD version, but it's done so excellently well. But the one thing I didn't realize, and this is going to be my gem, is the song on here, which is from Paul Stanley's solo album, which is "Take Me Away Together as One," which has the crazy drumming of Carmine Appice, or Appice, on there. The version that's on every pressing that I've ever heard of this has a fade out, but on this Japanese CD version of it, there's no fade out. They have a version of it on here that has a complete proper ending, like a dead stop ending to the song.
Really?
And I was so taken back by that. I was like, wow, I've never heard that version ever before. So that is going to be my gem.
I'd love to hear that. That's cool. And that was never released before on CD, though, right? The
No.
best of the solo albums. I know it was out on vinyl, like an import, but I didn't think it was ever on CD. That's cool. I'd love to hear that.
It's really cool. If you go to CD Japan online, they still have them on there, and I highly recommend it.
All right, BC, what do you got? What are you so proud of over there?
I'm not proud of anything. Anyways, I always caught these guys live, but it's a band named after a porn star, Lord Tracy. Deaf Gods of Babylon came out in 1889. With what back at the time was their lead singer was Terry Blaze, which fronted Pantera. Back when Pantera was a glam band, which I thought was kind of funny. And they're kind of like a little fun band, I guess. Their lyrics are kind of a little joking and shit, but very like a heavier Cheap Trick sound to like everything, even in Steve's favorite song off the album, which I'm going to tell you guys is Rats Hotel.
Ugh.
That's like a hard crewish song, but they're not bad. I mean, they just died in the lack of the 1990 era. The 90s came and they left.
All right, very cool. Deaf Gods of Babylon by not Kick Tracy, Lord Tracy. All right,
Different band.
And I'm going to reference David Lynch as well, I guess, which I just actually found out about this evening.
Yep.
Our good staunch listener, Rob from Vancouver, sent me a message, and it was actually like maybe an hour and a half before we were leaving to come to record tonight. And he said, and actually he corrected me, which I meant to do at one point, but I totally forgot about it. When we talked about Triumph, about Phil X, he was not the guy that I saw play live with Triumph. It was Rick. Yeah, so the guy's name was Rick Santers. That was the second guitar player for Triumph when I saw them in 1986. And thank you, Rob from Vancouver, for correcting me on that. And I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So and he actually gave me The Gem Is Gonna Be from Rob. So he sent me this band. I was like, all right, I'll check it out. I'm always, like I said to you guys out there, I said I'm always willing to, if you guys have something you want us to check out in BC, you definitely got to check these guys out. I really dig these guys. Never heard of them before. They have I think they have 3 studio albums. They just put a live album out this year. They're called Audrey Horne. I guess according to Dylan, that is a name of a character from the Twin Peaks show, correct? Yep. And so there's another David Lynch thing. The album is from 2014. It's called Pure Heavy. These guys are good. There was a lot of great shit on there. There's 2 bonus tracks on there. There's 11 songs and then 2 bonus tracks. The last song on the album is called Boy Wonder. That really caught my ear. I'm like, holy fuck, these guys are good. And Dylan went in to get his drinks on the way here tonight. So I put their live album out that just came out this year. I'll tell you what, check these guys out. They fucking rock. They're great. I wish they had a studio album out this year. They may have made the list for this year. So that's our hidden gem. So check them out. So Dylan's got Now It's Dark from Anthrax. Mark has the Paul Stanley Take Me to Gay. Was that a Freudian slip or what? Take Me Away. Together as one with a song with the hard ending. I want to hear that. And BC's got Lord Tracy. What's the name of that album again? I couldn't write it down, BC.
Deaf Gods of Babylon.
Deaf Gods of Babylon. There you go. And I have Audrey Horne, Pure Heavy from 2014, given to us by Rob from Vancouver. So Rob, and I'm calling him Rob from Vancouver because I totally butchered his name last time I said it out there, and he said, just call me Rob from Vancouver. So Rob from Vancouver, thank you once again. Kick-ass album. I can't wait to delve into these guys some more and check them out. And actually, I read one of the reviews on Amazon for this album, and it said if you like this album, their first album just blows it away. So I definitely got to delve into these guys. So Rob, thank you. And Mark, like I said, I can't wait to hear that Kiss song. So let's rock back into some Rush and take it away, Mark. It's your show again.
All right. So October 19th, 1993 was a day that will go down in history for me as a moment where a tear ran down my cheek, a tear of happiness, when I picked up the then latest record by Rush called Counterparts. Now, let me take you back a few months before that. Once again, I was at home listening to the radio like I usually do after I come back from band practice. And the guy in Q107, the infamous, hey everybody, that guy, he was on again. And he came up with the same comment as he did the last couple of records. Rush has an album coming out soon, and it sounds just like Moving Pictures. I was like, okay, here we go. It's going to be one of these records again. But they released a single first, this time, that I had heard, called Stick It Out. I remember I was with my friend Michael at the time, and we were in his basement, and he had a little small home gym, and we were, working out a bit together. And it came on. And we both stopped, looked at each other, and we literally had to wait for the DJ to come back on to be confirmed that that was actually Rush. Because when that song started, it was so heavy, I was like, that can't be Rush. But as soon as Geddy started singing, sure enough, that's Geddy. That's Neil drumming for sure. Listen to that drumming, and it was just one of these moments where it was like, if the rest of the record sounds like this, we're in for something fantastic. So this record, like I said, came out October 19th. It was done at Le Studio again and McClare, the same as the other records. But the big difference here was Bye Bye Rupert Hine, okay? And as Geddy Lee says in a thing I read here not too long ago, it says, Geddy Lee recalled the difficulty the band had in achieving more power from some of their tracks produced by Rupert Hine on Rule the Bones, but were able to get on tour. Okay, well, like I said, that was the same thing as well. So gone was Rupert Hine, and back in was Peter Collins. Now, Peter Collins did Power Windows, and he did Hold Your Fire. Now, when I first heard that, I was like, those records are not exactly my favorites at the time. So I was thinking, is this going to be another, odd record? But I just heard the first single. It was heavy as hell. Well, little did I know at that time, and like I learned years later, the big thing that changed this record and the secret weapon of this album was a man named Kevin the Caveman Shirley, who engineered this record. And he was picked because, as Geddy Lee said, of his raw and natural sound that he used, which required minimal use of reverb. And that was one thing that Alex Lifeson hated, though, when they were tracking this album. He likes using a lot of effects. He likes recording in the control room with the engineer. And apparently Kevin Shirley put his foot down and said, no. We're getting rid of all this junk that you use. You're just going to go into the studio room with a straight Marshall 412 with a Les Paul, and you're going to start playing. And apparently they had huge fights, like massive fights over this. And finally, apparently Kevin Shirley and Alex went to a bar one night, had several whiskeys apparently, and hashed it all out. And Alex agreed to try it his way. And I'm glad he did, because even he said later that he started getting used to the idea of doing it his way and started liking the idea of doing it his way. As he said, quote unquote, you can feel the wood of the guitar vibrating against your body, and it was more susceptible to that really cool feedback. So that was a big thing. And also, Geddy Lee started using his Fender Jazz bass. And he used a very, very old Ampeg bass amp. And the sound just got so much thicker and heavier. And Kevin Shirley is the main reason behind that. That sound of that record is fantastic. Now, the guys years later went on to say that while they think the record really helped them and saved them as far as, getting more of an audience again, they don't really look back on this record fondly. Now, I think that's kind of heresy in my opinion, because that's a great record. It's one of their best records, actually, I think. But again, this is one of those records where it's the blueprint, and then the perfection of it, I think, comes next album. But this record is really good. I mean, again, we have another record here where they released a lot of singles. Stick It Out came out in October. Cold Fire came out in January of 94. Nobody's Hero came out in April 1994. Animate came out in 1994 in June. And Double Agent, which was the last single, came out in September 1994. Now, if you notice, there's a bit of a gap between Roll the Bones and Counterparts. They took a year off between records this time, which was good. I think that gave them some time to refuel. And one of the things that they did that I extremely interesting as far as recording was that they were recording at this place called Chalet Studios here in Ontario, which ironically I started working in not long, a few years back. I was doing recording there myself with some of my band stuff. And I was like, to me, it was holy ground because, they had done a pre-production of Presto, Roll the Bones, this album, and even Test for Echo at this studio. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic to be in the same room as they were doing stuff. So what they would do is they would write the songs, record it on 8-track, take the 8-track, bring it to the studio in Quebec with the producer. They would dump the 8 tracks down onto the 24-track tape, and they would just re-record their parts proper using the 8-track recordings as a template. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, because they apparently said that one of the things they wanted to avoid was the demo-itis, where you make a demo of a song, it turns out so good, and then you can never recapture it again. So doing it this way, they sort of had the demo on file already with them all the time and were reproducing it against the demo. So I think it worked out really good. It sounds great. I mean, every song on this album I really liked. And besides the fact that they, had Peter Collins producing, they had Kevin Shirley doing the engineering. They also had Bob Ludwig mastering it, who's a huge name in the mastering world. So that also obviously helped immensely in that. They also had an Australian guy named Michael Letho who did the mixing for it, who did a great job, I thought. And the track listing, I mean, come on. Animate, Stick It Out, Cut to the Chase, Nobody's Hero, Between Sun and Moon, Alien Shore, The Speed of Love, Double Agent, Leave That Thing Alone, Cold Fire, and Everyday Glory. I mean, this album for me, there is not a skip song on this at all. Like, not at all for me is there a skip on here. And, you know, this record went platinum in Canada. It didn't do as good in the States. It only sold 500,000, like, gold. But the funny thing is, though, is that while it didn't necessarily sell that good, it did good on the charts. Counterparts reached number 2 in the U.S. and was one of their 2 highest charting albums in the United States, and number 6 in Canada. And Stick It Out was a number 1 song on the Billboard album rock charts for 4 weeks. So, as you can see, things were starting to pick up for them. And again, they did chart in Germany. They got to number 47. In the Dutch album charts, they went 56. Sweden, they were 45, and in the UK, they got to number 14. So things were starting to pick up for them in a good way. And I'm curious to see what you guys think of it before we talk about the live situation.
Boom. Counterparts. Again, we're doing this homework for this episode, and this album even really grabbed me right from the get-go. Like you said, Animate, Stick It Out is definitely one of my favorites off this one, with the between the guitar and the chorus. Nobody's Hero. I'm a sucker for acoustic guitar. Between the Sun and Moon, I mean, there's a little, not the whole vocal, but there's a little vocal part Geddy does, and it just gave me a Zeppelin feel to it. It gives a little part, not the whole song. Alien Shore, I love the solo, the nice mellow solo, and Speed of Love. Double Agent's another standout. And I like the catchiness of Cold Fire. But as far as sound-wise, this is, again, they're going in the right direction, getting back to meteor sound, I guess I would say. But overall, this is very enjoyable for me.
Yeah, for me, this is Heavy Rush. Love this album. Animate, top 10 Rush song for me. Fantastic. Very heavy, great pace in the song. Slow down before the solo was really cool. There's a really, really cool drum fill in there. And it's got a little keyboard hint in there that I really like. Stick It Out is like friggin' like that that is heavy as fuck. And then when that friggin' speeds up, that same riff is absolutely fantastic. Solo's fantastic. Cut to the Chase. Got a little mellower vocals in it, but then you got a heavy kick in. Just friggin' fantastic. Great deep track. Ripping solo. Alex is kicking serious ass on this album so far as I'm concerned. You're only 3 songs in, and there's a cool back and forth drum part that you absolutely have to listen to this song in your headphones because it like swirls around your head. Freaking awesome. And this has that Hammond organ accent in it too that I think brings a really cool thing to it. Nobody's Hero. It's a good song. Gives you a good break from the pummeling that you got from the first 3 songs. Between Sun and Moon, I hear AC/DC in this. That guitar part reminds me of I don't know, but it has an AC/DC feel for me. Another amazing deep track, Alien Shore. I love Heavy Rush. This is just another kick-ass song. Double Agent then has that spoken word. It's Geddy Lee, but it fucking sounds like Alice Cooper. I'm like, Alice Cooper could guest voice on this with no problem at all, and it has that Alice feel to it as well. Leave That Thing Alone, instrumental, very good. Cold Fire, that'd be a cool name for a fucking band. It's like if they wanted to play an anonymous show in a club, that'd be a cool thing to go under. Great. So Everyday Glory, great album ender. And I don't know if it's just me. It seems like the last 2 songs in this album are louder than the rest of the album. I don't know if it's just my imagination or if it's kicking up. But Kevin Shirley definitely was the them changing from Rupert Hyman to Peter Collins, and with Kevin Shirley, that was the kick in the ass, I think, that that they needed to get that, and this is fantastic. And I am 100% with Mark. Not a skipper on this album. Heavy Rush. The production's amazing. And this album, it's almost an hour long, but like it goes by quick, and you want to listen to it again right away. I love it.
Yeah, for me, this album sounds the fullest out of the ones that we're going to be talking about tonight. That heaviness that they were looking for, that impact they were trying to get. I feel like they hit it with this album. I mean, you start off with Animate, which is a classic for me, the classic Rush song. The guitar riff is fantastic. It's full. There's no empty space that you're wanting for something. It's just a constant, full awesome song. Stick It Out is just, it's almost not even a Rush song with how heavy it is, but it still has that Rush feel to it, and that riff is just so heavy. It almost reminds me of some of the stuff from Clockwork Angels for some reason. I don't know why. Cut to the Chase, the solo in that is blistering. It blows me away. Alex is absolutely the MVP, and I'm glad Kevin Shirley had a couple drinks with him to get him to try it out his way.
Some liquor.
And Leave That Thing Alone, another great instrumental from the band. They excel at the instrumentals. It wasn't the lengths of La Via Strangiato or anything like that, but it's short and sweet, to the point, great riffs in it, a lot of good jamming from the band. This is a really solid album. It's a good pick me up from the Keys era. If you were to, I like Roll the Bones as well, but this is a very good. If somebody's like, oh, I really don't like, what's the
Hold Your Fire.
Hold Your Fire. If somebody was like, I really didn't like Hold Your Fire, you can give them counterparts to be like, this is where they're going. It's okay. I'm good with that. So yeah, this is a fantastic album.
Great. Well, like I said, this album really, really hit home for me when I heard it. So for me, the announcement of a tour was like heaven to me. It was like music to my ears, and the boys didn't disappoint. May 7th, 1994, Maple Leaf Gardens, Counterparts Tour. Tickets again were getting harder and harder to get on tours now, as they were getting better and better with their records, and people were coming back in droves to see Rush now. And opening band, not sure how familiar you guys are with this band, but I Mother Earth opened for Rush at Maple Leaf Gardens on this date. They are kind of like a trippy sort of, it's like a hard rock
like
band.
Like a stoner rock?
Yeah, it's sort of like that. Like they use congos sometimes on stage, and congas. I mean, sorry. And
Sounds familiar.
it's like it has Edwin, that guy. He was a pretty popular guy. I don't know, but he was the singer for the band, and they were very like, it's like they wanted to be Zeppelin but much heavier, and it I don't know. I suggest getting the first album, I Mother Earth Dig. Check it out. I think you might actually like it, guys.
Yeah, I've heard the name before, but
yeah, they opened, and it was pretty good. It was an interesting set. I mean, people were kind of like, sitting on their hands for most of their set, because they also had kind of long songs, and it's good joint music. Let's just put it that way.
There you go.
But other than that, once they were done, they got a polite, clap.
Yay.
And that's the thing, though.
Get the fuck off. Rush is coming.
Yeah, well, basically, the thing that was kind of getting me annoyed, though, as I started realizing, is that Canada was getting stiffed, I thought, with openers, because they were having, we got like the Hip, which I wasn't too into, and then we had these guys, which I was okay with, but I was hearing that Rush were having like Mr. Big opening for them in the last two tours in the United States, and I was like, what the hell? I loved Mr. Big, and I love Paul Gilbert. He's like one of my biggest guitar influences, and to hear that they were opening, and doing like the whole American leg with these guys, I was getting so pissed off with that. But, I was there to see Rush, right? And this set, this tour, and I failed to mention this before, the Presto tour and the Roll the Bones tour, there are some fantastic soundboard recordings on the internet from those two tours, if you want to check out their show. And I think they're both from California, the sets that are recorded the soundboards. Just check them out on YouTube. You'll find them, no problem. And they sound incredible. And this one has a really, really good soundboard available online. And the set goes like this. Dreamline. And now what they opened with before was Ric Flair's thing, dan, 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 dan. That whole thing, that's what they would come on stage with. Then they go into Dreamline, then Spirit of Radio, The Analog Kid, Cold Fire, Time Stands Still, Nobody's Hero, Roll the Bones, Animate, Stick It Out, Double Agent, Limelight, Bravado, Mystic Rhythms, Closer to the Heart, Show Don't Tell, Leave That Thing Alone, Drum Solo, The Trees, Xanadu, and this was the big thing that people's jaws literally, I think I heard like 12,000 jaws hit the floor at once when this happened. They closed the first set with Cygnus X1 Book 2, Hemispheres Part 1 Prelude. Wow. I was like, what? And they came out with the double necks and everything for it. I was like, whoa, okay, now we're talking. So after they were done that, there was like a huge ovation. Like they came back for the encore like in record time after that. And then they did Tom Sawyer, then they did Force 10, and then they closed with YYZ. But when they were done YYZ, they did like 30 seconds of Cygnus X1 Book 1, the outro part of that. So it was a really, really, really great show. The sound was incredible because now Alex had like 5 or 6 full Marshall stacks on stage with him now. So it was like a really ballsy, loud concert. And like, let's put it this way. I put my Rush concert t-shirt on my Counterparts one, and I don't think I took it off for like 3 weeks. And I was so proud to walk around with that shirt on at this point because they were back. Like I was like telling everybody, Rush is back. You haven't seen anything live until you've seen them now. And it was just, I don't know. I just, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's one of my fondest memories of seeing Rush live. I'm wondering, did you guys get to see them during this time?
No. Like I said, my first show was R30. Kicking myself in the ass now because, I mean, this was, what was that, 95?
94.
94, the tour. Yeah. I don't know. I just wasn't, they weren't in my wheelhouse then. Like I said, I was the live album guy for them, and I was like, I just, and there was so much other stuff going on, too, with other bands and stuff. I just never got to see them until R30. And that was 2000s, right? 2000, 2002, something like that.
Anybody else get a chance? What about BC?
Nah, I did. After I saw him in '92, it wasn't until I think me and you saw him.
R30, whatever that was. Dylan, you were like what 4?
What year was it?
94.
I would have been born.
Yeah. That's why we had a newborn in the house. That's why.
I did not see them. I didn't see them until the Time Machine tour in 2011.
Yeah.
So that was a good tour.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to see them.
Okay, great. So from here we get to the last album we're going to be talking about today. Now this album for me is a very interesting record. I have a lot of great memories about it, but I also have a lot of sadness around this album. And I'll explain, and I'm sure the sadness is probably going to be felt by a lot of other Rush fans as well. The album we're talking about is, of course, Test for Echo. Came out September 10th, 1996. It was recorded this time at Bearsville Studio in Bearsville, New York, and it was mixed at Reaction Studios in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We had Peter Collins back again for production. I do not believe that we had Kevin Shirley behind the board on this. I think it might have been Andy Wallace or somebody like that was working on this with them. Now, after Rush finished their Counterparts tour, they took a break, the usual break, but this break ended up going on for much longer. It ended up being an 18-month break because Geddy Lee wanted to be home for the first year of his daughter's life. He had a new daughter at that time. Also during that time, Alex Lifeson did his first solo record, Victor, and Neil Peart was doing a Buddy Rich tribute, and he was also doing something very unexpected at that time, in which he went back and started getting drum lessons again and starting again from scratch, learning drums with Freddie Gruber, and wanted to end up playing the new record all with traditional grip drum sticking instead of his usual way that he was playing. So he needed time to do it, and they didn't get back into the studio until late 95 and started work on it. So again, it was one of these things again where they did a lot of recording together. They did a lot of recording at Chalet, and they brought the stuff in. And this time they decided to do like a residency pretty much at Bearsville and recorded everything there in New York State. And it turned out really good. Now, they have very, very fond memories, and Geddy Lee ranks this as one of his 3 favorite Rush albums of all time. I can kind of see why, because it has the heaviness of Counterparts, not as heavy as Counterparts, but it has, the meat is still there, but it's not as in your face. I think what they didn't like about Kevin Shirley was that it was really, really like it was like really heavy, like I think almost uncomfortably heavy for some of them. You know what I mean? So they went back and modified the sound a bit. I still think it's a fantastic sounding record, and it has, you know, Neil's new drumming style and has a new drum kit. He changed to DW and stayed with DW from here on in, and those drums sound incredible on this record. It's one of the best drum sounds on an album easily, I think, on here. And the songs on here are really, really exceptional, I think. I mean, Test for Echo, Driven, Half the World, The Color of Wright, Time and Motion, Totem, Dog Ears, Virtuality, Resist, Limbo, and Carve Away the Stone. I mean, I think they're all great songs. Again, they charted in all the right places again. In the Dutch album charts, they were 53, Germany 45, Sweden 26, 25 in the UK. But they also charted very high in Finland, number 9 on this. And both records went gold in Canada. Well, the records went gold in both Canada and the United States. So this record, when I got it, at first I was a little, not concerned, but I realized that it was a little bit of a step back sonically. I didn't think it was as heavy, but I still thought that there was a lot of really cool meat to it. There was a lot of great bass playing and drumming on this. The singing was really good on this. And a couple of things happened on this that got me excited, though. One was the announcement of the Evening with Rush tour started on this album. So no more opening acts. It was just Rush, and that was like music to my ears. So that was one of the things I was really excited about. But before we get to that, what do you guys think of the record?
Again, Rush Test for Echoes. I mean, this is a very an overall enjoyable record. Got some heaviness, but then there's some Miller stuff, but not as heavy as the other one. But between this and the last one is a tight race for me. Test for Echoes, right off the gate. Love the solo part. Driven, the opening riff. Of course, I'm not going to say bass and drums because it's friggin' Rush.
There you go. It took a while today.
Took a while today. After that, Dog Years. That's a heavier one for this album. Virtuality, Limbo, the drums in it. I mean, just overall, musically, I think it was like not as heavy as the last one, but still a little bit more variety, up and down. I mean, but overall, very enjoyable.
Yeah, I didn't mind this album at all. I think it's a pretty good listen front to back. I was a little disappointed by the step back of the heaviness, but that's, every album's different, and I do appreciate what this album was trying to do. Driven's a really good song. I love the use of the acoustic guitar, going into using it to punch the electric up a lot. I like the tempo pickup at the end of that song. It's really, really fun. And you can tell that Neil's drumming is a little more eclectic on this album, and in a good way. Virtuality, I love the riff on that song. The lyrics are a little... I love when listening back to older songs talk about the internet and talking about the modem and connecting through the internet. I love hearing that and looking back and seeing, oh, this is what we thought of the internet back then. But it actually seems like it's kind of an upbeat look at the internet and connecting with people through the internet, whereas a lot of other ones are very down on
complaining
technology.
About it.
And so that was really refreshing to hear. The lyrics to Dog Years were a little cheesy for me, but I did like the song's energy overall. And this is a pretty good album that I like to listen to through in its entirety. There's not too many songs that I would pick out to listen to on any given day, except maybe Driven. But this is a really good front-to-back album that I think works best in the sequence. Just my opinion on that.
Yeah, I enjoy this album, and I have to truthfully say, until I make the playlist, the playlist is called The Next Rush Episode on my phone. I had not listened to any of these albums all the way through ever until a couple months ago. I was always, picking songs here and there, the ones that I've seen live, like Test for Echo, Driven, Resist. But like this album it's very cohesive. I like it. It's I think that this has Geddy's best bass sound on this album. Yeah. Like the boom, boom, like in Test for Echo is freaking fantastic. And that's another great opening thing. I love the pre-chorus in that. It's very good. It's got a smooth feeling in parts of it. Driven, fantastic. I remember we saw them on the R30 tour. I'm like, wow, this song is freaking fantastic. Half the World, really good deep track. It's a mid-paced song, but I love the mandolin solo in that. It's friggin' fantastic. The Color of Wright, decent middle-of-the-road song. This is another one that has an AC/DC guitar feel in parts for it, maybe like a Money Talks or Who Made Who feel to it for me. Time and Motion, really intense, a little more use of keyboards in that one. Totem is a good mix of acoustic, and see, this has more like back and forth of songs. It's not just like totally in your face, and but they're good songs though. Dog Ears, yeah, just a weird topic for a song. Not a skipper though, but the music is heavy in it. Virtuality is really good. Resist, I'll tell you what, listen to Resist. It's like an anti-suicide song. Read the lyrics of that song. It's deep, and it's like turn around, turn around, turn around. Like if you're on the edge, just don't do it. Turn around, and it like de-glorifies suicide as a glorious way to go out. And it's not, and it's just an absolute fantastic song. It's fantastic, and I usually don't like songs like that, but like when you listen to that chorus is like just like, oh my god. Limbo instrumental. I like their instrumentals on these last couple albums. Yeah. They're not like 20 minutes long, but they're good. There's a lot of cool different parts in it. Carve Away the Stone. The very beginning riff of that reminds me of Working Man. Great heavier song, great solo, good ending. I hear some. And when you listen to Carve Away the Stone and then you listen to Vapor Trails after that, there's shades of what you're going to hear on Vapor Trail, even though after this album you didn't even know if Rush was going to continue. But if you listen to these two albums in a row, you could hear shades of what's coming way down the road after this album on Vapor Trails, on Carve Away the Stone. Very enjoyable album. I like the heavy elements, and it's a fun listen.
Yeah, and one of the things now that we're going to get to the just the live element before we end off things here. Rush announced that they were going to do some live dates, obviously, for this album. One of the things that they did first, though, which was really unexpected and showed that Rush was really, really getting connected back with a lot of people, and even the music business itself were taking them very seriously, is that they did a surprise concert that was sponsored by Molson Breweries, which is a big beer company here. They did a surprise gig where you had to get tickets the day of, and they played that day at the Phoenix Concert Theater. And I remember it was all over the news here that Rush was playing in Toronto, a surprise gig. And it was hilarious because they set up on this little bar stage, Rush, okay? The drum set took up like the whole stage pretty much, okay? And they had cardboard cutouts of Pamela Anderson all over the stage. It was the most funniest thing you've ever seen. And they played like a 45-minute set, and people were like losing their minds. But then they announced the whole Proffer tour, and they did two shows in Toronto. One was on June 30th, 1997, and the other one was July 2nd, 1997. Now you might be thinking, well, why did they not do like July 1st? Well, July 1st is Canada Day here, and I think that they were booked to do something else on that. My memory serves me correctly. But I was at both shows. of course, because I was like I was sold on Rush by now. Like I was like head over heels, into them and like madly into them like I was when I was younger. The set list, incredible. 2 sets. Set 1, Dreamline, Limelight, Stick It Out, Driven, Half the World, Red Barchetta, Animate, Limbo, The Trees, Virtuality, Nobody's Hero, Closer to the Heart, and the big thing that I think made this concert tour sell out immediately was they did 2112 in its entirety. Part 1, Overture, Part 2, Temples of Syrinx, Part 3, Discovery, Part 4, Presentation, Part 5, Oracle, Part 6, Part 6, Soliloquy, and Grand Finale, Part 7. That was the end of Set 1. They came back for Set 2 with Test for Echo, Free Will, Red Sector A, Roll the Bones, Resist, Leave That Thing Alone, drum solo, and this was probably Neil Peart's best drum solo in like 15 years that I've heard. Incredible. Natural Science, a deep cut from Permanent Waves that we haven't heard like live in years. Force 10, Spirit of Radio, and then Tom Sawyer, and then he encored with YYZ with the Cygnus X1 outro. I remember when this show was done, both of them, I was like thinking to myself, this is incredible. I'm loving this. They can do no wrong. I can't wait to hear what's going to happen next. And what did happen next was a complete knife in the heart for Rush fans, as Neil Peart's daughter and wife both died not long after this tour was done. And plans for Rush were put permanently on hold. In fact, if you read the book Ghost Rider, which I highly recommend reading, it chronicles that whole time period. They were seriously considering not coming back ever again at that point. Neil was hanging up the sticks. He didn't drum for years after that happened. And the fact that we had Rush after that come back is a miracle, I think, because I don't know how many people would have probably recovered that quickly and moved on with music. But, we'll get to that, I guess, when we get on to the next set of albums. But, that's why I said earlier that this album has a love-hate kind of thing, because it was so good. I didn't think nothing was going to stop them now. I mean, different stages came out shortly after as well. It was a fantastic live album, and we'll get to that as well, I'm sure, in the next episode. But I just didn't foresee any sort of stopping of the momentum, and the momentum came to a grinding halt with that.
Yeah, I remember, because I remember when Vapor Trails came out, and I had picked up different stages, and I was enjoying the hell out of it. Like I said, that was my only lifeline to the to the songs from these 4 albums we talked about tonight. And and I didn't look deeper into Rush or anything actually to what was going on. And then I remember when Vapor Trails came out, like, oh, a new Rush album, and that was the first new Rush album that I bought, probably ever. I think I had Moving Pictures, but I don't know why they just didn't resonate with me. But I mean, we'll get into Vapor Trails and stuff the next time. But Mark, your expertise in Rush is, I mean, that's why we love having you on here. You fellow Canadian to these guys, just absolutely fantastic. And so we'll go around the table. We'll wrap up. Everybody rank the studio albums for us, please. And Mark, give your plug when we come to you, and we'll wrap up and we'll get out of here. And it is a longer episode today. We have to do the material justice because I'll do a BC. It's Rush. So Dylan, how about you, my friend? What do you got for us?
I'll rank the albums first. Just in terms of albums that stick with me, I'm gonna go Roll the Bones first, which is probably sacrilege for a lot of Rush fans, but I don't know, the songs just I remember them from when I first got into Rush, so they have a little more meaning to me. So it'll be Roll the Bones, Counterparts, Test for Echo, and then Presto, very distant fourth. But this is a really fun era for Rush. I think they're going away from the keyboard sound that a lot of people were a little off on, and I like a lot of the stuff that they do in the keyboard era, quote unquote. But I really do enjoy this guitar-driven period for Rush, and I think that basically they were building up and evolving into something completely new, and it's horrible the tragedy that befell after this run of albums, but life happens sometimes, and it was like Mark said, it was a miracle that we got more Rush after this, because I don't know what I probably wouldn't have been able to go on after that, like touring and keeping the status quo. That's a lot of pressure, and that's a lot of sadness and heartbreak to deal with all at once. But they're a great band. They rest in peace to Neil now. Unfortunately, is this the first episode that we're doing of Rush?
No,
since the second episode, I think it is. But they're a great trio, no matter what era you're in. This is a great show of each of their talents. I think Alex again shines really well in all these albums. I'm glad that he didn't have any fucking reverb, as Kevin Shirley puts it in the Beyond the Lighted Stage documentary. But yeah, this is a great era to check out if you haven't already. And thanks again, Mark, for coming on. Your expertise is unmatched, especially in this group of people here in Pennsylvania. So
definitely,
thank you.
Definitely. Mark, how about you, my friend here?
Well, for me, it's really simple. My favorite of these four is Counterparts, followed by Test for Echo, then Roll the Bones, and Presto, a very, very distant last. I mean, I can still listen to it, obviously, but it just doesn't hold up compared to those other records. As far as giving myself a little plug, as we mentioned earlier, I do have a record out, Project Gemini, in the year 3073, Book 2, out. If you go to my Bandcamp site for Project Gemini, you can find everything there. It's going very well, so if you're interested in getting a CD, you might want to go and grab one sooner than later, because they're going pretty good, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Okay, my picks out of these four, my first two are pretty much neck and neck. Counterparts, Test for Echoes, Roll the Bones, and of course the Presto at the very end. And again, another fun episode to do, and again, I keep saying this every time we do episodes like this. I need to listen to more of these albums to really, truly enjoy. Mm. And thank you, Mark, for being on. Like I said, I just love listening to you talk about Rush and the passion you have. I mean, it's truly enjoyable. Just your stories of the concerts and everything. Great hearing them. And another great episode. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I agree totally with BC. Mark, we appreciate you coming on the show. And for you guys out there, if this is the first Rush episode that you listen to with us, here's our past Rush episodes. Part 1 was episode number 68. Number 2 was episode 101. And the last one that we did was 143. So there's the part 1, 2, and 3 of the Rush saga that we have. And we have plenty more Rush coming up, and as I said on the interview episode with Mark, we're going to have him come on to do something besides Project Gemini and something besides Rush, because I know Mark is not just a Rush fan and not just totally encompassed with Project Gemini. We know he's a hard rock and a metal fan, and we'll definitely get Mark on for an episode for God only knows what, but it will definitely be coming up. And I rank the albums. My rankings are the same as exact same as Mark's and BC's. Counterparts, Test for Echo, those are close, but Counterparts just a little more than Roll the Bones and Presto. But I like doing this because if we weren't doing this podcast, I don't think I would have ever listened to these albums all the way through. I would have just pretty much stuck with the live albums that I have, show of hands, different stages. And I think when they do them albums, they pick great songs. And you still hear a lot of them, not up till when they finished, but there's a lot of check out these albums. If you dig in these albums, there's some fantastic deep tracks on these albums that you don't get on those live albums, and I'm very glad that I got to listen to these albums. And there's some songs on these albums that aren't live staples that I will be throwing on a playlist just to throw on and listen. And but it's fantastic. Love talking Rush. Rest in peace, Neil Peart. Then there's a ton of live stuff out there coming out. I'm sure they'll release stuff. They've been doing fantastic box sets with re-releases, like Permanent Waves. I think was maybe the last one that they did.
That was the most recent.
The most recent one. They've done Farewell to Kings. So they're constantly doing something. They're keeping their name alive. So, get out there and enjoy some Rush. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We love you guys. Rob from Vancouver, thanks again for the suggestion for my gym this evening. Those guys rock. You guys kick ass out there. We love you guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time, and there definitely will be a next time.